Good afternoon. I'm Fatima Camarillo. You could also call me Blanca or Blanca. I don't know, depending. You can call me whichever. I don't really mind. I'm very flexible on that. So how does knowing Chicano studies allow me to better contribute to society? Side note, if I'm looking off to the side, sorry, I've got my bullets here. Helps me organize my thoughts a little more. So what two major events or issues did you learn from this course? I think of all of our course content, which is very personal to me as somebody who is Hispanic slash Latina, identifying, whatever you want to call it. Two of the ones that stuck out to me most was, of course, Reyes Lopez Tijerina and the caste system. So with Tijerina, I thought it was really interesting because I had never heard of him. I hadn't been taught much besides the standard Cesar Chavez, maybe a little bit of Kiki Camarena. But other than that, I can't think of any really big or like any other Chicano figures that were explicitly brought up and taught in a classroom setting formally. And I thought that was really sad, especially since as somebody who has a really big interest in journalism, had IBC had the option, I would have been a journalism major. So I think Tijerina is a really important figure in terms of obviously covering Chicano issues in more of a in a way that mainstream media wouldn't, which is huge. Media has so much to do, especially in politics. I think it's really important. And he was doing really good work. And of course, after his death, I think some people would argue even more so because then he is considered a martyr by the community, and it causes an amount of rage that I feel is not unheard of. I think we've seen it a lot, and it tends to be the catalyst for a lot of minority groups who are already feeling tension, especially with like lawmakers, policymakers, the government in general, probably their communities' protectors. I think that Tijerina was another example of the straw that broke the camel's back in a lot of ways. And then the caste system, obviously, I think it's really interesting. It's not a completely new concept to me, but I did like having to explore it a little more. And I thought what was really interesting to me and was really sad to me is that I think as a community, still hold on to the lighter skin is sought after. It is seen as better than having darker skin. So the lighter you are, the more affluent you are, and the darker you are, the less valuable you are. And I think that is really sad. And I have had, I've seen it in kids more. I've had younger girls look at my skin, which I wouldn't say I'm the lightest and I'm not the darkest. Well, my mom and my sister are really light, and they'll look at us and they'll be like, I think you're so pretty because you're so light and I want to be as light as you. And it's really upsetting to hear from children who are like 5, 6 years old, right? It's to know that they've only been here for so long, and they've already picked up on the fact that intrinsically, because of the way they look, they are valued as lesser. And I think you could say a lot more about the caste system and how it affects how we are now. But that was really interesting to see. And then, of course, just the general fight for Chicano rights, I think, isn't really covered. Obviously, it's not going to be covered in depth in the way that it would be in this course, because it's dedicated solely to the fight for civil rights, but I think other than a few paragraphs in a history book that was mainly about Cesar Chavez, I had never seen it taught, again, in a formal setting. There was obviously a prevalent knowledge that there is a large Hispanic / Chicano / Latina community in the US, but learning our explicit history is very interesting. And I think as somebody who lives in a border community, I've lived in the Valley my entire life. This is all I know. There are so many Hispanic people. Our population is almost, I want to say, what's it called? It's like the word for it's mono, but then it's like when there's only like mostly only one like race / ethnicity in an area. I forgot the word, but it's basically that. There are a lot of us here. So to me, it's a little odd to know that we live in this type of community where so many, this history is personal to so many of us, and these topics are so intrinsic with our daily lives, living so close to the border, and yet it isn't taught widespread, even if it's just like basic facts. What are the outcomes of this new knowledge? I think it makes me a little more aware of who we are, of where we come from. I was probably like 14 when they had taught me that California and a lot of the US used to be Mexico. And that's why there are so many people. And there is such a large history of Hispanic people in the US, and it's because they were transferred citizens. And personally, my family did come from one of those communities. There is a town named Camarillo, and that is where we are from. That is where my father's from. That's why my father is a US citizen, and his father was, and his father was. So I thought especially that was really interesting to look into a little more, just because it was so personal for me. Taking this course is a really big motivator for me to look into, to pay more attention to explicitly Chicano issues, or maybe even just pay a little more attention on a local political level, because I feel like it's our civic duty as people who might identify as Chicano or Latine or Latino, Latina, Hispanic. It is our civic duty to recognize and celebrate what the people before us have done, but also work towards more, because the people before us envisioned more. And it's great that we have what we have now, but I feel like in terms of progress, we're a long ways to go, and it'll never be over. I feel like the Chicano civil rights movement left behind a legacy of fighting. It is in eternal struggle, and it always will be. Not to make it grim or overly violent or daunting, but for a regular person who isn't all that interested in politics, you don't want to make it your life, I feel like your civic duty is more outreach. It is being part of your community. It is understanding what's affecting your community, and especially it's voting locally. It is being a part of your community. A lot of legislation and a lot of laws and policies get passed on a local level because people don't pay attention to them. And as someone a part of a minority who will always in some way, shape, or form be, with the way that things are, will always be low income, lower middle class. Our salary range in the Valley isn't high, I promise you. I feel like, especially in the community that we live in and who we are, it is even more important to do what you can. It's your basic civil duty. yeah, sorry. I'm a very political person because I believe that life is political. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this course with me. It was a journey. It's always great to listen. The I Am Joaquin poem is probably my favorite poem ever. I think it is so powerful. And at the end of the day, I really like being part of this community. So yeah, thanks.